Good afternoon from wet, windy, misty Galloway. We've had a great summer here with lots of sunshine, which has meant that I haven't been in the garage as much as I would really have liked. But it's beginning to look like summer might be over, and it's not even end of August. Yeah, it's been a couple of months since I posted, so I thought I've finally managed to find some time this weekend to do a bit of work on getting the car to a position where there might be something worth showing. I've done odd bits and pieces over the course of the summer, mainly sanding back the engine bay and buffing up or roughening up the interior, ready to paint it, as you see, with a primer. And I put the primer on earlier today. So I'm pretty pleased, and I thought I'd just kind of share what I've done with you. So there was a lot of sanding. There's a mixture of paint. As you recall, if you've been following this, I've got lots of new panels on this car, which are have that sort of black finish on that comes from Moss Motors. And apparently you don't have to take that off altogether, particularly if you're going to use an appropriate primer that can go on top of that finish. So you can just roughen that up with an 80 grit or 100 grit, 120 grit sandpaper, and then use a primer on top of it. There are other areas that were bare metal that I've taken back to bare metal, and then there are a whole bunch of stuff, especially in the engine bay, which was this green paint. So I just roughed that up. As you can see here, I've kind of roughed this up. It's not looking great because it's a bit splattered, but just to key it for the primer. And so if you've got a mixture of bare metal, that sort of black coated painted new panels, and older painted panels, then apparently from my research the best primer to use is this stuff, which is a 2K epoxy primer. So that's what I've used. It's not the easiest stuff to apply because you have to mix the primer and the hardener and then 10-20% thinners to get the right consistency. And it's pretty toxic stuff, so you've got to wear the hazmat suit, you've got to wear the goggles, you've got to have the face mask on, proper good respirator face mask. You don't want to get this stuff on your skin, you don't want to inhale any of the fumes. And you've got to get it on fairly quickly. And so I've never painted anything, I've never spray painted before, but I bought myself a second-hand, a big, what do you call these things? I've lost the word, generator thingy, to replace the little baby one that I had previously. So this bad boy should generate enough pressure to run a paint gun. So I then bought myself a paint gun, and one of the best makes of paint gun is DeVilbiss. And so this is a DeVilbiss paint gun. It's an FLG5, which is it's not the highest quality. DeVilbiss produce a lot more expensive guns than this, but this one is about £100 to buy it. So it's more expensive than a lot of the guns that you can buy, like Sealy's, for example. But it's quality stuff, and I fitted it with a pressure gauge and with a water trap to make sure that we don't get water in the paint. It's a pretty standard gun, so you've got you've got air intake at the bottom. You've got an air control valve, which generally leave wide open. You've got this nozzle here, this thing at the back here, which you can adjust to fully open, so that when you pull the trigger, the valve opens appropriately. It comes, you can adjust the shape of the fan, paint fan as well. And you stick your paint pot on the top, obviously. So it's bog standard stuff. And it came with a 1.4 paint nozzle, which is, again, pretty useful for most things. And I thought that that would be perfect for initial primer. Once I've got that on, got the epoxy primer on, then I plan to use a high build primer. But before the high build primer, I'll be filling any defects with this U-Paul's body filler, and then using that, sanding that back, getting it level, and using a high build primer on top of it before finishing with this cellulose paint, which is in British Racing Green. So that's the plan, and I reckon the 1.4 would certainly work for this and for the top coat. But I would probably, for a high build primer, I might need a bigger, wider nozzle. So I invested in a 2 as well as a 1.4. So with that in mind, I set things up, and I rather foolishly mixed a full one of these of primer, hardener, and fillet, and thinners, a good quality thinners, which are in the black tin there. And this is, I'm just doing this, for the first time, and I'm doing it in the garage. And despite the fact I'm going to be wearing a mask and doing all this stuff, I thought I was a bit worried about, I don't have an extractor fan, I don't have anything to kind of get rid of the fumes and any overspray that happens. So as luck would have it, I thought yesterday around lunchtime the sun came out and it got really pretty warm here. So I opened the garage door up and I wheeled this car outside and thought I'll spray it out there, and then I don't need to worry about fumes. Still wearing all my gear, of course. So I did that. I took it outside and I sort of thought, okay, let's have a go at it. And I started to spray, and the paint was spluttering and splattering. It wasn't atomizing. It was coming out in a sort of splatter, which was not great news, considering I'd set it up with about a pressure of about 20 on this thing, and so 20, 24, I think, on my gauge here, and which should have been about right for running a primer, but it was coming out like treacle. I mean, it just wasn't great at all. So I then started fiddling around, trying to think, what can I do to try and improve things? I couldn't get the pressure to go up any higher for some reason. This thing wasn't behaving itself. And I'm messing around in the garage here, turned around, and it's chucking it down with rain outside. So the whole car gets soaked, and the option of painting it is gone for the day. So so I wasted half a can of paint. And went back to the drawing board. Spent yesterday evening drying this thing off, and again, just rubbing it down with a cloth and a tack cloth to pick up any dust. This morning I had to do a little bit of sanding here and there because there was some flash rust. I had to do a bit of rust treatment, so a lot more messing around, and finally got in a position where I thought, okay, I can have another go. So I did a bit of reading last night, and I had another sort of look at this primer, and as you'll see, although it's an epoxy primer, it actually, when I looked at the information that came with it a bit more closely, or in fact just the receipt that they send online, they describe it as a high build epoxy primer. So I reckoned that part of the problem, at least, was that I needed to use the 2 nozzle rather than the 1.4. So I changed this morning to the 2, and when I checked this, the double gauges on here, for some reason the one that I had this on the left here wasn't going up quite as high as on this side. So I switched this over and started the generator up, and I managed to get the pressure up to 40 on the gauge, which is pretty high, but I did look online and I noticed that some people have used pressures of 40, particularly for a high build primer. So basically with a pressure of 40, I put a little bit more thinners in. You know, I was using the recommended 10% yesterday, so I'm maybe upped that to maybe 15% just to make it a little bit thinner, and the two nozzle rather than the 1.4, and lo and behold, I got a really nice spray. So this is the result. It's not perfect, you know. There's a bit of orange peel there, but you know, that's not worrying me in the engine bay. I mean, it'll do fine. So I've managed to spray all of this, and I've managed to spray the inside, but I had hoped to sort of go up over this stuff here, but I didn't actually have enough paint left to do it. So so there we are, job done, after a bit of trauma this weekend. So what have I learned? Well, I guess one thing is to research your paint a bit more closely and recognize that HB stands for high build, and that probably means it's a bit thicker than the average primer. I've learned how to fiddle around with the controls, the pressure, the flow, and so forth to get paint atomized. That's the key thing. I mean, it's not that difficult to spray, but none of it's splattering out of the gun. It's got to come out. It's got to be atomized in the gun. It's got to come out appropriately, and then it's just then a question of getting the, you know, your position right and your movement right. And I've learned, you know, you can practice little shots in the wall like this to try and look at the shape of and size of the fan. So and get it kind of where you want it to be, and hopefully end up with the ideal one, which is kind of like that, I guess. So it's been a good exercise from that point of view, and it's allowed me to move the project forward a bit, which is good. The back end of this car obviously is as was, so and I've run out of paint because I messed up the first half can, so I'm gonna have to get some more paint so I can finish this bit off, these areas that I've done. This stuff here needs to be sanded back. I did do a bit of exploring, and you can see there's filler under there. I was exploring because this is actually a sandable primer that's on this, so I assume that it's an etch primer rather than an epoxy, because one of the things about epoxy is that it's kind of not easy to sand. It clogs up sandpaper, so they recommend you don't sand epoxy. So when I put the high build on, I don't have to flat this, I just have to put it straight on top of this. Whereas with an etch primer, you really need to sand it before you do anything on top of it. But it is easily sandable. And you can see I've been doing a bit of exploring because there are, I don't know if you can find some bits here, there are sort of, if I can get a focus, there are kind of orange patches here that are obviously rust coming through. So, and that's one of the problems of an etch primer, is that it gives a little bit of protection against rust, but really not enough to be confident about. Whereas if you put an epoxy primer on, then that will stop any rust getting through. It provides a really good barrier. And that was the main reason for doing it now, because as we're running into autumn, it may not be possible to do any more paint work on this car, and I don't need it sitting in a garage over the winter and rusting again. So I'm happy that I've sealed the thing, and I have to decide, I guess, whether I start doing any more on this area before the winter kicks in, or do I now go on to try and get the suspension sorted out over the winter, get the wheels back on the car, get it off this rotisserie, and continue the painting in the spring, which kind of seems a more logical thing to do, I guess. Yeah, I'm pleased I got this done. I'm pleased that I've had a crack with a paint gun, and I have a sense of what I'm doing now. And I'm glad to be back on the job. So hopefully we can crack on from here and make some further progress. I think that's probably all I need to say at this time. I hope that's been helpful and informative. It's given you a bit of an update on what I'm doing, and I'll let you know how I get on, obviously, once I get working with the rest of this paint. As I say, we're the next stage. Once I've put the whole car in epoxy primer, I can then use the body filler to fill in any defects and sand it and get it to a condition where I can then pop on several coats of the high build primer, sand them back, flatten them back each time, and get the thing to a really sort of smooth finish for the I'm guessing maybe 3, 4, 5 or more coats of British Racing Green cellulose car paint as a top finish. And then I've got this Maguire's Ultimate Compound, which is used once you've got the sort of final coat on. I'll use this to kind of cut it back and take off any orange peel or any issues there. And then I've got the Maguire's Ultimate Polish to give it a good shine afterwards. And hopefully I'll be able to see my face in it once we're finished, and I'll be sharing that with you. But I guess realistically, where we are now, I suspect that might be spring, summer next year, and that the focus maybe for the next few months is going to be getting this chassis onto its wheels so that we can progress from there. But I'll keep you posted. I'm going to set this camera up a bit better, fiddle around with that over the next few months as well, so that I can make a little bit more professional video than this. But in the meantime, thank you for watching. Thank you for those of you who've subscribed. If you haven't subscribed, it'd be great if you did. And yeah, keep in touch, and I'll let you know how I'm getting on soon. Bye for now.